Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. As the dust settles on the double McLaren disqualification at the Vegas Grand Prix, the key question becomes how and why did McLaren make such a critical error at such an important time in the season for both of their drivers in this World Championship fight? It turns out, before qualifying even got underway, they knew there was a level of plank wear risk this weekend. The same was true back in Brazil, as we'll dive into, and as the race got underway, the team knew they had a potential problem here, but did not make it especially clear on the radio quite how critical this issue was. Lando took matters into his own hands at the end of the race, but it still was not enough to evade disqualification. What does this mean for their performance in the upcoming rounds? Will they have to significantly increase the ride height, costing their performance even more? What a mistake when this didn't need to happen at all, you would think, especially because they should very well have seen this coming. Lots to get into today. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. This is Lando Norris on the podium. I think, look, in hindsight, watching his body language after the Grand Prix, it was pretty clear that he knew that they were at serious risk. The reason why things took so long yesterday were twofold, because we knew that they had been measured under the 9mm. That was a slam dunk disqualification, as we saw for the Ferraris back in China. The FIA, though, checked all 10 cars that scored points. So they, well, checked everything for plank wear, everything else was fine. This is also why they didn't want to make it clear on the radio what the issue was, right? They talk about lift coast. We'll look at the radio messages in the coming minutes. They talk about making sure that lifting off into certain corners to manage the plank, but of course the question was also, was it fuel, right? And there was some radio comms at the time that indicated fuel might be the primary concern, but it also was a little confusing at the time because there were 2 VSCs early in the race. Usually that's enough to mitigate any potential fuel related concerns. They checked all the cars. McLaren tried to argue it, very much unsuccessfully. This was Andrea Stella immediately after the race, looking pretty happy. Maybe they thought that they'd got away with it. This is Andrea Stella when it came out of the FIA meeting, and well, it was pretty written on his face here what the result of that was going to be. McLaren argued that there was additional and unexpected porpoising, limited opportunity to test due to weather on day one, and shortened practice sessions. Now, I think the point of them saying this is that they knew they were going to get disqualified. I think what they were trying to do is at least say, look, this was not intentional. We were not trying to cheat. We just cocked up massively, right? That's pretty much the conclusion here. Now, every other team suffered with the same thing. There was limited running, but also like a sprint weekend only has one practice session. It's not like the running was that bad this weekend. Yeah, there were some like red flags and rain and all this, but still, it was fine within reason. This was interesting though, the additional and unexpected porpoising. This has not been a track that has suited McLaren well. The last couple of years, they've struggled here heavily. This year, I guess they thought they'd had the solution to it. They were going to run the car lower, they were going to do this, that and the other. They were certainly running the car low. You could even see through the final corner, that turn 17, whatever it is, into the start-finish straight, that Max there was obviously low to the ground, but just not sparking on the front of the floor. The McLarens were sparking at the floor on even that corner, and certainly down the straight. It's bumpy, the Las Vegas strip, right? It's caused issues for McLaren in the past. This weekend they thought they had the solution, but maybe what they should have done is just said, all right, we're not going to beat Max this weekend. He's probably going to win anyway. That, before the weekend, I thought that was going to happen. It was just too logical with the strengths of the Red Bull right now and Max around this circuit historically and all that type of stuff. McLaren, realistically, if they were just, 4th and 5th, 5th and 6th, yeah, it's not ideal, but you take the performance loss and you accept the fact that Lando and Oscar are going to score 10, 12 points, but that would still be plenty in the context of the World Championship fight. Instead, they did this. Now, we'll talk about the porpoising in a second and the fact that I should have seen this coming. Firstly, I just wanted to clown the FIA for a few seconds because this was the official announcement that came out yesterday. They say car number 4, Lando Norris, and these are the numbers. So his right-hand side front measurement was 8.88. His right-hand side rear was 8.93. Both of those below the 9mm required, so a disqualification was inevitable. Now, interestingly enough, when they initially announced the Oscar Piastri documents, it said exactly the same figures. And I was looking at this and I was thinking, the chances of that are incredibly minute, right? Like, I wanted to get a statistician to have a think about it, because I was like, there's no way. They drove different races. Lando did lots of management over the last few laps, as we know, and we'll get into. Oscar was in DRS for a lot of the time, which should change the level of downforce at the rear of the car. So there's no way the numbers are the same. But no, it turned out that they literally just copied and pasted it. So, like, I swear, the FIA is a clown show, right? Like, I know maybe you don't think this is a big deal, but, like, come on. This is, like, the most important document to the day. And they'd copied and pasted the measurements and the reasoning, and they're not thought to change it. And then they had to issue a corrected document where they revealed that his left-hand side front was 8.96, his right-hand side front was 8.74, and his right-hand side rear was 8.90, which, again, was lower than Lando's. Or actually, no, it was pretty similar to Lando's at the rear, wasn't it? His was 8.93 at the rear. Yeah, so even Oscar's was worse. And we'll discuss probably why it was worse for Oscar in a second, because the team really made no attempt for him to manage it, whereas it was clear to Lando that there was some management that needed to be done. So anyway, these are the pointers that, Craig Scarborough points out on where these infringements happened. As we know, all the other cars that scored points anyway were fine. Before we get to the repercussions, just a quick comment on Kimi Antonelli and Mercedes, because as a result of this, they double podiumed. Kimi got his podium after the fact. Kind of a shame, and it would have been cool to see him up on the podium because he's not 21, so I don't know what would have happened with the champagne, whatever. There was some talk about that. He did score a podium. It's now 2 podiums in a row for Antonelli, and over 48 laps, he actually enjoyed, or somehow managed to get those tyres to degrade in a negative manner. And this was incredibly impressive, because Antonelli, at the start of his time in F1 and even in F2 last year, getting the tyres to hold up, holding onto the tyres, understanding what to do with them, was a problem that he had, and a learning that he had to go through. I don't want to say vindicated to some degree, but there were many people saying that, Kimi should have done another year in F2, not good enough, not ready, and all this. But I thought it was a no-brainer, and I think the Mercedes thought it was a no-brainer to put him into F1, and I think we're starting to see that. Next year, I think you've got to be ready next year for what this kid might pull off, because it was very impressive. And yeah, Russell cooked his tyres after just a few laps trying to fight Max at the start of that stint. But the fact that Kimi was faster on, very old tyres indeed, and pulled the gap to Charles Leclerc at the end was pretty sensational. And he scored a podium at the end of it. Like, his drive was impressive enough, but now it was officially a P17 to podium drive. We've now seen those 2 weekends in a row, one from Max and now one from Kimi Antonelli as well. This is what McLaren said. During the race, both cars experienced unexpected high levels of porpoising not seen in the practice sessions, which led to excessive contact with the ground. Now, is that actually true? And we'll discuss that in a second. Well, it is true that they had excessive contact. What is not maybe so true is that they did not see this in the practice sessions. I think there were reasons to expect this from McLaren's side. We're investigating the reason for this behaviour of the cars. Again, is it likely this is a Las Vegas specific phenomenon, given the layout of the track that has not suited their car in previous years anyway? I think there's a good chance that it is, and that they can turn up to Qatar reasonably confident that they'll be okay. But it's got to be said, we are going to finish the race in Abu Dhabi, where the championship will probably be decided. And if one of the McLaren drivers has won, they will not be celebrating as hard as they might until that floor is checked. Because for these next 2 Grand Prix, the plank wear will be a concern after the race. People will think, well, are McLaren okay? Are they going to get disqualified again? Or they raise the car substantially, take no risk at all, but they accept the fact that Max is probably just going to win both Grand Prix, which is probably not what they want to expect. The Ferraris are probably going to be nowhere the next couple of rounds. The Mercedes, they are potentially the threat. But if I'm Lando, given it even this weekend, obviously Lando wants to win. The point is, if McLaren said, a bit shaky this weekend on plank wear, and we'll see why they should have known that here in a second, let's raise the car, accept P4, P5. Lando can be P4 the next 3 weekends and still win the championship against Max anyway, it doesn't matter. But I guess to be fair to Oscar, maybe they felt like, oh no, we need to run the car at the limit here because we need to give Oscar a chance to win the race so we can, to make it fair for the team. I don't know if that was their thought process, but one of the potential thought processes that they could have gone through. This is why McLaren, they have a phenomenal car. Like, the engineers, wow, what a job they've done this season. But as a team, they are still a midfield team at heart. Like, it's almost like this has been coming, right? Like, we've seen it through the season. The McLaren have not operated like a championship-winning team, and this is really all of that in one go when it mattered the absolute most. As I say, I think it's likely this was a Vegas-specific phenomenon, and in Qatar and Abu Dhabi, it will go back to not being a major concern. But there were big rumours that in Brazil, they were also pretty marginal on plank wear. And they were legal, but they were pretty marginal. And if that continues, they may not want to be so marginal. So Lando says we had to do some managing towards the end of the race. We now know that it was due to some issues on our car that have got us disqualified. So he was very clear that we had to manage those issues, and the fuel was likely just because, well, you know, if we talk about fuel on the radio and people think it's fuel, then they won't look at Oscar's car, hopefully. I think that was the implication. But of course, they were going to do that. So an absolute disaster from McLaren. The key question is, should they have known this was a problem? As I say, there is a rumour that in Brazil, they were pretty marginal on plank wear. And they turn up to this weekend's, and Andreas says that they had unexpected porpoising that wasn't seen in the practice sessions. Now, this was a great little piece here that this Lando fan puts together from FP1 and FP2, where you can see, well, you can actually see Lando's helmet here bumping up and down a lot. There was porpoising spotted. This is during practice. You can see, you know, lots of sparking happening at the end of the straights here. You can see Lando's head bouncing up and down. They did some testing on the floor. There was a radio comm in this video where Will Joseph comes on the radio to Lando and says, okay, we're just going to box and check the plank. We're just going to see how much it's worn to see if we're okay. So they knew that it was potentially an issue here. They were sparking a lot. I mean, this was actually that corner I was mentioning earlier, round the final bends. Max's car through this corner does not spark like this, but the McLaren's was. So this is in practice. And Lando's head was bouncing up and down. Like, there was some porpoising happening here in practice. Like, they knew that this was a potential issue. So for Andreas Seller to come out and say, oh, no, we didn't respect to the porpoising, it's like, well, actually, it was there. They were talking about it during the practice sessions. And Lando, after qualifying, said that he was struggling with it as well. So, you know, probably at that point they knew. This then was Lando on the podium. We know that he probably knew this was going on. I just wanted to quickly address this as well, because a few days ago we talked about this potential cheating drama where teams were using these, well, they were finding ways to give more heat into the skids, the part of the skids that don't get tested, so that they can expand and protect the other elements from getting exposed, basically. That was the theory of what some of the teams are playing at. Now, look, is that related to what we're seeing here? John Noble in an article for the race doesn't believe that it is, but it was still very interesting timing, wasn't it? Especially because John Noble went on to say in his article that, you know, I'll leave a link for you guys down below, but he does mention this. One source revealed that in Brazil a fortnight ago, McLaren's skid block wear, while fully legal, was measured as being marginal, suggesting that it was pushing things more to the limit in terms of its approach. And it's like, yeah, Max is close, he's competitive. They obviously need to have a look at some things and try and maintain that competitiveness. But the fact that they were pushing the margins in Brazil, they saw the sparks, they saw the placa in Vegas, and they still decided to go so, you know, close to the limit that they actually went over it. It's just such an absolutely awful error to make at this point in the season when your drivers are fighting for a title against a Max Verstappen who needed a miracle, right? I mean, Helmut Marko literally said it coming into the weekend. I think I've got the quote here. Something has to happen to Lando. There is no way that Max can win if something doesn't go wrong for Lando. And McLaren have just offered it up to them on a platter. It's actually unbelievable to me, especially because they knew this is a problem. Now, after the reconnaissance lap, they probably also knew, whoa, we might have set the car up here a little bit too low. So this is and race fans has always done a brilliant job here, putting together all of the radio comms during the relevant radio comms during the race, from Tom Stallard to Piastri and from Will Joseph to Lando Norris. So yeah, we see a number of comment on lifting into certain corners. Again, lifting is relatively commonly done for management in general of temperatures and for management of fuel to a certain degree as well. But we can see here that it's relatively early, as Will Joseph says, small lift into turn 17, turn 5, turn 12. Those are the ones that he was commenting on. And then he comments on, okay, a little bit more lift and coast in those corners. Tom Stallard says the same thing as well to Oscar Piastri. You know, we're going to stay out. Fronts are going a little bit. Let's make sure we're still lifting into 17, 5 and 12, please. this is then when Norris, because I think they knew this is an issue, and Norris certainly knew that this was what needed managing during the race. You guys might remember a couple of years ago in Spa, Red Bull knew that they were marginal on plank wear. They'd set the car up low, and they were telling their drivers every lap, don't forget to lift up Radion, because that's where the plank will wear. We're going to lift through there, make sure we manage the plank where it will be okay, because they've got sensors on the cars. So they would have known that things are marginal, but of course they can't measure it to the width of, like, the amount that Lando got disqualified is less than the width of a human hair, right? We're talking 0.1 millimeters. A hair is, I don't know, 0.2 millimeters or something, right? Like, that is the margins we're talking about. So they can't measure those on the road while they're at the trackside. They have sensors that will imply there could be problems here, but we can see what the drivers are getting told. So, look, Piastri was getting told a little bit of lift into 17, lift into 10. Now, the most remarkable thing about this for me is that at the end of the race, they then told him to go and get Max. So this is just, like, unbelievable to me. They knew that there was an issue. They were very aware of this. We can tell by the radio comms early on. But while they didn't want to say it on the radio, they were trying to manage this for a good reason. So then the question from Lando was, do you want me to DRS or to overtake? And I think, again, in hindsight, it's quite clear why that was said. Because if Lando sticks in DRS, then, and just follows George around for the next, 20 laps or whatever, then he will have DRS, his downforce will reduce on the straight, and he will have less plank wear. And in hindsight, had he done that, they might have got away with it. But no, they told him, no, overtake, we're going to go get Max. So maybe, clearly they thought, I guess McLaren thought the plank wear was actually okay and they were going to get away with it. So then Lando overtakes, and then he's told, what do you mean we're going to go and get Max? We're just too slow right now. Max was just putting in absolute mega laps after mega laps. So then it became clear that, okay, he wasn't going to beat Max, right? So then there's further comments about, oh, if we can just carry more minimum. This was also when Will Joseph told him, because, well, Lando basically asked him, what have I got to do, right? Yep, let's just do whatever we've got to do. Please just tell me what I've got to do. Now, I think at the time that was read as, okay, what have I got to do to go and get Max? But Joseph says, okay, let's just do more. And that, in hindsight meant pretty clearly do more management. What do I do with 10? If I lift more, it feels worse. At this point, it was very clear that Lando was not going to be catching Max and winning this race. But there was no comment made to Piastri in this time at all about plank wear. Now, I guess because he was in DRS, they thought, maybe we'll get away with it. We're not going to tell him to back off of Kimi and all this. It was almost like it's better for Piastri to get disqualified than to tell him that he's got to back off. But for Lando, they didn't make it very clear, right? Like, Norris says, you're happy with everything. It's almost stressful to read this. You're happy with everything. You need more or what? Lando's still overtaken to turn 14. We can do an earlier lift into 17, bigger lift into 12, so using the overtake button. Happy to lose 2 seconds in the 3 laps remaining. So they told him, like, if you want to back off, we're okay with that. Now, Piastri was also actually told here, with a lap to go, that he should be lifting again. They mentioned that here, like that he should lift again in the final lap. So at that point, they're not worried about anything else really on that side. So clearly they were concerned. But Lando took matters into his own hands here, right? Like, Will Joseph said the fuel looks okay now. So, like, they mentioned the fuel on the radio, but again, I think it's pretty clear from all these comments, it wasn't about the fuel, right? It was not about the fuel. And Lando did that all on his own, right? So he was not told, Lando, back off massively, 5 seconds a lap. He knew that he had a big gap behind. He probably felt that while the team had told him that it's okay, just manage it here, lift there and the other, he probably needed to do more. But by the time that he took matters into his own hands to do more, then it was too late. And I just think in hindsight, it's remarkable because McLaren knew this was an issue, and yet they still told Lando, we're going for Max, right? Like, come on, right? And maybe it wouldn't have mattered anyway, but just a catalogue of errors. The championship, therefore, looks like this. Max Verstappen will be licking his lips, 24 points behind Lando Norris with 2 races and a sprint to go. It's also just quickly worthy of note, I know that this weekend wasn't Piastri's fault, but since the Dutch Grand Prix, Max has gained 104 points on Piastri. It's like 7 rounds, 7-8 rounds, and Max has gained over 100 points on Oscar. That is a truly disastrous collapse. Lando, though, is still the title favourite. According to the markets, it's kind of remarkable. Lando was considered a 92% favourite after coming second in yesterday's Grand Prix, which was totally understandable. But then, as soon as the disqualification came to fruition, it's considered to be roughly 75%. Max is back up to 20%. So, it's still all to play for here. I feel kind of bad for Lando, really, because he's actually done a sensational job in the last few rounds. Say what you want about how good the car is and all of that, but Lando's done a great job in recent rounds, and he's basically been perfect for the last few weekends. This weekend, he was, not perfect. Obviously, the start wasn't great, but he did everything he needed to do to be in a great position in the championship. 42 points ahead with 2 rounds to go. It looked like it was over, right? It was over for Max at that point. But then things turned around. And the thing is, for Lando, if his engine didn't blow up in Zandvoort, he would be another 18 points ahead. If he didn't get disqualified yesterday, he'd be another 18 points ahead. The championship would be over. He'd be 60 points ahead with 2 rounds to go. Lando would be world champion after Las Vegas. Remarkably enough, if his engine didn't blow up in Zandvoort, he would have become world champion yesterday and then become unworld champion after getting disqualified. That would have been quite something. But look, we get the finale that many of us wanted. It's worth keeping in mind, there's a possibility that Lando just wins in Qatar and wins the championship. It's worth keeping in mind. 24 points doesn't seem like much nowadays compared to what it used to be. But Lando can still turn up in Qatar and win the championship right there. The problem is, I think mentally, this is going to be a massive challenge because Max is frothing at the mouth. And you know that Max, if he didn't already, he will have absolute razor blades on his elbows now. He will see that title. If Norris needs to overtake Max for some reason, good luck with that, right? We've seen in some recent Grand Prix when Max has realised, okay, the title's beyond my reach, that he's not going to defend that hard. Yeah, good luck getting that same Max Verstappen now. You can, Norris was scared of Max into turn 1 in Vegas for good reason. He better be scared of him again at the upcoming Grand Prix. And I think for Lando, again, I'm kind of counting Piastri out of the championship at this point. It doesn't feel like his recent form just isn't good enough. Maybe there's still, 5% chance. But, really it feels like it's Lando versus Max at this point. It's going to be difficult for Lando mentally, I think, because he will know that he will feel that he should be world champion by now. As I say, if the engine doesn't blow up in Zandvoort, if this disqualification doesn't happen, he would be the champion already. That's not the case at all. And he, knows now that Max is very experienced, knows how to deal with these type of situations. And while Lando has been very mentally strong, he's managed the starts, apart from Vegas, relatively well in recent rounds. He's executed, nailed qualifying laps when it's mattered. But the pressure is now seriously on because he knows that he doesn't have much of a buffer. A single mistake, a big, crash or something puts Max back in the championship lead potentially if he wins the next Grand Prix. And there's a sprint to manage as well. So I think that's now the challenge, right? Because for Lando, he's now got to again kind of regroup and reset. Because in his head, he would have felt like in Vegas that it was it. He was basically won it. He's basically done enough. And now it's very clear that that's not the case anymore. And yeah, if there's anyone you don't want chasing you down right now, it's probably Max Verstappen. So intimidating for sure. Lando, if he wins this title, whoever wins this title will deserve it, right? And I think if Lando does win it from here, he will also be very much deserving because he'll have to dig pretty deep, I think, Lando now to, mentally get himself in the right spot because it's probably going to come down to Abu Dhabi. And yes, I don't know what type of storyline the FIA are cooking up there. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. Might do another video later today as well, depending, because there's been loads else happening yesterday outside of even just this. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the Spotify support as well. Appreciate you all. And take care. See you next time. All that good stuff. Bye-bye.